So hello everybody, what a beautiful weather. I would say the first day of spring here in Latvia. And I want to share a video about the self-inquisition meditation or practice, which basically means it's a longer little bit story, and I wanted to devote this video into it. A self-inquisition involves of asking myself, who is that I that sees? Who is that I that observes? And this is one of the main, let's say, spiritual practices towards awakening or towards enlightenment, I would say. But this is not the only one. There are a couple other things which are really strong. But I would just want to devote this video into the self-inquisition. So basically, I think it's written in many books. Maybe it's a teaching from many great spiritual masters who have realized the self, what is the self, or who have actually been awakened towards the self, or maybe had a little glimpse of what it is to actually feel the self, and then they are so, let's say, embraced by the light, or embraced by this emotion, or embraced by this feeling, that it maybe changed who they actually are, or maybe changed the form they are, or maybe changed the way they live, or maybe changed the way, let's say, change themselves in a complete way, to a completely or a slightly different person, but in a sense in a completely different person. So the self-inquisition, or the self-awareness, or the questioning yourself, who am I? I think it's not that, because when I was like 10 years ago, I was meditating like this many times, and then in my case I had many experiences and many I'd say also really enlightening experiences with this. So I just wanted to devote this video to these experiences and my point of view about this, and especially channeling information about this, because I have basically, when the being comes to the channeling, that's all they talk about, the self. Find your true self, be yourself. That's all they talk about. It's like, if some person is asking a question from the mind, like, should I eat this, or should I lift up this, or should I do this, what will happen? They're asking this from the perspective of the mind. But the beings, mainly from the channeling, want to give the perspective from the self, or the perspective from the consciousness, or from the perspective of the soul, and not all of those people, not even maybe the smallest part of these people maybe understand this, but still you and many people have the questions of what it is to actually be awakened, what it is to be actually enlightened, what should I feel, or who I will become, or what are the things that will happen afterwards. And many people are thinking that I want to be enlightened because I want to understand and everything. I want to be enlightened because I want to become something. And these questions arise, or these, let's say, intentions arise from the mind. Now, this is something that has to be looked deeply, and I think many of these, I will talk about this from the one channeling experience which I had, where there was a spiritual teacher, highly spiritual teacher, that came to the channeling. Well, not highly, like a spiritual teacher who lives somewhere in the mountains, and he had students and he reached the enlightened state, and he was actually teaching his practice of self-realization to the others. And this is an accurate step-by-step information that I received. So the first thing is let's say, the pursuit to self-realize is only when the pursuit for the self-realization has ended. you will never attain spirituality or realization of the self if you are intending to realize it, if you are intending to achieve it. So, and why is this? It's because whenever you are attempting or have an intention to be or to do something, intentions themselves come from the mind. Intentions themselves come from this highly active, always seeking mind. But the self is the part, or the self-realization is the part that is out of intentions, out from pursuits. It's the inner feeling, it's the inner calmness state, it's the inner self state that has to be allowed to come out. So whenever we are having an intention or a pursuit of something or to something, we are already lost in our minds. We are already lost in our perceptions, in our conceptualized brain thinking. And whenever we are in a conceptualized brain thinking or in a conceptualized mind patterns, we are actually making a noise within ourselves. And when we are making this noise, we are reducing the chance to actually hear the self, the who am I. We are actually, all the mind chatter is blocking the possibility to actually hear ourself or the self. So, and now how can we get closer to the self? And I was like thinking many times about this, and this is one of the main things which I ever wanted to talk about or to share to people. When you become exposed to the self, you are exposed to highly calm mind. You are exposed to inner peace. That's the first thing that will come. Calm mind, inner peace. You are exposed also to, let's say, pleasurable now state. Like, I don't see the road. You are exposed to that you are so joyful, pleasurable with everything that is happening right now. And you are in a let's say, in a deep acceptance of everything that is happening right now. You have no judgment about this moment, whether it's a good or bad, or comfortable, discomfortable, or you are like just observing what's going on, and you feel pleasurable feelings, joyful feelings. I don't know, the English words how I could and should explain or interpret these words. You have a highly enhanced now state, the now feeling. And when that feeling comes, you don't have any, let's say, judgment of whether I should do this or whether I should do that. You are more or less in the allowance of the absolute best to happen as it should. So you have lost and you are losing the mind illusional qualities that the mind thinks what is best, what should I do, and what should I definitely do because I want to avoid something, like being afraid of something, then I want to do something. So all of these things, all of these concepts, all of these thought patterns disappear or highly reduced by, let's say, a high level. They reduce. And then what happens is you are exposed to let's say, more higher energy. more deeper, higher energy, the energy that you will feel from the heart, and energy that you will feel also from the body, like all your body is in a beautiful, blissful state. And this is only just a glimpse of feeling who you actually are. But the thing is, asking this question, who am I? It's something that you don't ask. It's something that will always be shown to you, but not told to you. It's the only thing that could be only sensed, but not heard. It can only be only be felt, but nobody is actually touching you. And so whenever you are, let's say, doing a practice of trying to actually wait. When I start talking, then these come up because I think I'm losing oxygen. Whenever this question arises, whenever this question comes up, you, I don't know how to explain it. You don't ask with the mind chanter, who am I? Because the mind will only respond to you as the mind, as with a thought, as with an image, maybe, as with maybe a sentence with an explanation. But then you ask yourself a little bit deeper, who is the one that was observing these answers? And then you have maybe some more concepts, some more perceptions. But the thing is, you try to stick away from these concepts. Imagine you're hearing a thought, or you're seeing a thought, or you're feeling a thought, or you're perceiving a thought. Ask yourself, who is that part that sees this thought? And then maybe for a moment there is a little bit of misunderstanding, or like, what do you mean? Like something like this. And who is the one that asked, what do you mean? Who is the observer that observes all these activities? Because when we sometimes are too much in the mind, we classify ourselves. It's a good moment, it's a bad moment, it's a moment I must do, it's a moment I shouldn't do, it's a moment like this, it's a moment of that, blah, blah. We are always classifying ourselves in some kind of a form, or some kind of an object, or some kind of a whatever you call it. Then you come a little bit back and you ask, who is the one that is witnessing these thoughts? Who is the one that is observing these thousands and thousands of thoughts? And then you come back. And then you try to look for it. Then you try to feel it. Sense it. Then you try to maybe understand it, but it's not with the thing of understanding. Maybe come a little bit closer to this state. And this is the absolute first intro of this. The next step, what happens is, you start doing these meditations, questioning yourself. But sometimes when you get really deep into it, you feel like there is a whole bunch of a huge tunnel opening up, and you are being sucked into this tunnel, like really close to, let's say, astral travel. And I have had these experiences 3 times, and they wanted to show me something, but I was afraid to go there. And then I decided to give this lesson or teaching to one of my friends, and he was answering the same as I was talking about. And I said, no, just come a little bit backwards. And he said, oh my God, what's happening? And he said the same. A tunnel started to open up, and he said he didn't sleep all night. He was holding to this to the table where he was sitting, And he said he was so afraid, and then he started talking about his other experiences, which he has had, and those experiences also said that when he was young, he was also exposed to this awareness feeling, but he got so afraid of it, and he attained also some abilities of some sort. He said that he could. There were. I remember when we were older, in older times, there were these cassettes with a magnetical tape in it. He said that when he did this with the energy of the hands, the tape just erased. And he said also that he could concentrate on a wall, for example, a concrete house wall. He could feel and taste the material, and he felt like he's in the wall. And he had like these remote abilities, you would say, experiences. And I said, well, yeah, that's okay. But what happens later is in a beneficial state or in a positive state, you start glimpsing, you start feeling these positive energies even more and more, and especially the being calmness. You start feeling that a little bit more and a little bit more, especially this calmness and inner peace state. And when you are in these inner peace states, in these meditative states, how I call it, you have a little bit amplified energy. You are a little bit, sometimes people say, I feel good energy in your heart. Sometimes people say, I feel my energy expanded. And most of the times people just say, oh, that's a really good feeling. It's a really good feeling. And they're just sitting in quietness. They're not thinking about any practice, or should I achieve some channeling ability, or should I achieve some physical ability, or should I now ask my angel, should I fix my car, or whatever. They are away from all these concepts. They are in the now state. They are in the beautiful self state. Just a small glimpse of the self. Maybe the absolute smallest glimpse. But it's completely enough to start the next step. And the next step now is the deepest meditation state. And the next step is when you are in such a awareness state, when you are in such a how I want to call it, meditative self-awareness state, and you don't have the mind chatter that much throughout all the day, then when you sit down in meditation, whatever the position or you want to have, or whatever the position you want to be in, lotus or just sitting or just being calm, whenever you are in it, it's really deep. It's actually really deep and intense, because when you are away from the mind, when you are away from the chanter that has slowly disappeared, maybe I needed to drive there, but it's already too late. When you are away from it, you have more space for the self to arise. Imagine this. The self is like allowing you to be as you wish. The self is allowing you to be as you are. The self has lowered you down on the earth. The consciousness has lowered you down on the earth and said to your sons, or to you as your kids, and he said to you, do what you wish to do, and when you're ready you can come back. And people started to dig, and people started to do many things, to like have the experience of something doingness, of something thinking that I could develop my own thoughts, I could develop my own concepts, I could develop and be something as a personality, and be something really tasteful, and really with the personality I wish it to be. And the self is always looking there, the self is always being there and just observing you. And when at that moment, when you are becoming calm and letting go of all those concepts, and letting go of all those situations, and letting go of all those, let's say, mind concepts, just call it like this, you start to hear and you start to feel the self a little more, a little more. You start hearing, you start sensing, you start tasting, you start smelling the self of the presence of the self, a little more, a little more. And you become more calm, you become more blissful, you become more joyful, you become more smiling and more accepting, with the thought that the whatever the best the life or the self is willing to offer me in this life, I'm willing to take it without any judgment. I'm willing to, this allowness that you allow the life, you allow the moments to be as they are. Well, it's completely opposite of normally what we people are. We want to do and work in a concept. We wanna maybe get some vaccines for the coronavirus. We wanna be everything except in the now state. We wanna be and do everything except as we are running away from the self, as we are being in a way afraid to finally meet ourselves, to finally be ourselves, to finally taste ourselves, who we actually are, to finally be born, and see and feel what is actually, how it actually to be alive. And so in these peaceful awareness meditations, when we are away of all those anxious and difficult thoughts, panicking thoughts maybe, or I don't know how you call it, pushing thoughts that just like push you or bombard you constantly. When we are away from all this, we have more space to actually feel ourselves in the deep meditations. And we are in that moment shifting to our energy body. We are shifting to our energetical state, to, let's say, astral body, to our soul, to our higher self. All of those terms are precise, but the only thing that is different is how you want to conceptualize and how do you actually feel it or explain yourself it to be. And then we can ask ourselves, who am I? Who is the self? Who am I? Who I am, maybe as well. Just because you are away from the mind chanters, just because now you are so deeply in your true beingness or in your true nature of who you are, you can be energetically now connected closer and closer, and this question will be answered to you. And it's a question that actually will never be answered. It's the question that can only be felt. It's the self-realization. And I cannot tell my own experience further, because I have only got to this point where this blissful golden-like or bright white energy appeared and gave a couple of answers or information that was not given with like words. It was only given by a feeling, and this information lowered me and is always now present in me, but I don't know how to explain it. I don't have the words to explain it, but I will continue further with the channeling information, because the channeling was given into words later when we channeled the spiritual teacher. So the spiritual teacher sent his students to the cave to meditate. And this meditation was just only to quiet the chanter, to get closer, deeper into the awareness state. And then he didn't tell them anything. He didn't even talk pretty much with them. He was just like observing them and gave them a couple of tasks, like, well, yeah, go and clean your room, or maybe plant these bushes. What I saw in the environment when he was living, there wasn't these grasslands and everything. There was like barely like rocks somewhere in the mountains, and it was difficult to actually grow something there. They needed to build up like a small like dusted rock like rockish like of sand, and then they planted this something in, and then they watered it. So and it was a pretty dusty and dirty work, and maybe also it was a little bit heavy work. And students that came back from the cave, which had their noses up in the air, the master just gave them, okay, so now just go and plant a couple of these bushes there, or food. And they said, whoa, we were 2 or 3 months in a cave meditating. We have reached, let's say, an enlightenment state. Why should we plant some kind of a slave work? And what the master saw in them was that they were still so deeply in their minds. They were so deeply controlled by this brain or mind conceptualization. Oh God, car stalls. They were so deeply into it that he just told them, okay, you can go back to the cave, or you can go back to your houses where you live, and maybe come back a little bit later. Because the students that were and that did understand everything correctly, they were like no questioning. They were like, okay. And then the next steps happened, which were also really important. That one of these students was because he was still so deep from these meditations in his now states, that he was so deep into it. When he started shuffling, when he started to do something with the wait, car just stopped. It's broken. When he started to actually do something with the grass, or with growing something, he just did something, a little bit of work, and then he just laid down. And he was like, whoa, what's happening? And he had like a glimpse of, let's say, a small awakening. He was in the process, he was doing something, but he was still meditating. And then because of the deep meditation state, he just sat down, and he was like, whoa, something happened. Like, he was so blissful and so joyful. He said, whoa, something happened. And the master, the teacher, was looking at him and just smiling. And the teacher know that he felt that. He felt that. He felt a little glimpse of the self. The mind wasn't there to disrupt him. The mind wasn't there to mislead him. And the teacher said, okay, now come, I will show you the next thing. And he said to him, now that you have felt a little glimpse of the awakening, you will maybe have a couple of questions, or some questions. You can come anytime and ask these questions. Okay, I will continue in different time in the next video.